get that first laugh, it's awesome. But just getting up there, I was ready to go. And I had, I decided to go to the local improv here in West Palm Beach for my first time ever getting on stage. And I was sitting in the green room with some of the comedians who do this on a consistent basis. And they said, how many times have you done this? It's my first time. And they said, you chose the improv with several hundred people to do, your comedy for the first time? And I said, yeah, I mean, where else would I do it? I don't want to do it in front of 3 or 4 people. I'm going to get up there and do this big, or I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
And so I had this bravado until I was the next one up. And then I was standing there and I knew they were going to call my name, and it became an absolute just terror racing through me. And I swear in my heart they could see it pumping out of my shirt. But I got up on stage and I did it. And once I broke the ice and I got a little bit of a laugh and I relaxed and I realized, hey, all of these people in the crowd here have come to see the rest of us perform. And even if I don't make everybody laugh, even if I fell on my face, I got up there and did it.
Yeah.
And the rest of the people in the crowd, maybe they have, maybe they haven't, but I'll bet you most of them haven't. And so just that alone is an accomplishment. And then when you say yes to things like that, when you say yes to facing your fears a little bit, especially when it comes to things that can help you with your career, I think you'd be surprised. And you'll walk into that next meeting, you'll stand up in front of everybody and they'll say, wow, I mean, look at you. You're like, this is a totally different person. It takes away the fear of getting up in front of people. And I would definitely encourage everybody to do it.
I got to tell you, Chris, I spoke in front of 300 people last year at a marketing event, and I wasn't nervous to do it. It's what I do, but I don't think I'd get up in front of people at a comedy club. I just don't think I'm funny, and that would be pretty intense. So I could imagine how you felt going out on the stage with your comedy routine. So you did that once. Have you done it again?
Yeah, I did it a bunch of times actually, and
wow.
I enjoyed it. I haven't done it lately. But I did, yeah. And that was the biggest venue that I actually performed in. I did some smaller open mics. And I do want to go back to it. It is a lot of fun. I do enjoy it. It's even, smaller crowds, bigger crowds. I will tell you that it's definitely a kind of a high coming off of a stage if you've ever performed just in general. And talking to 300 people, you probably felt it as well. When you come off of that stage, there's a real sense of accomplishment, whether it's, comedy or presenting content that you've created for a particular conference or event or business. There is a real high coming off of there where you feel just this massive sense of accomplishment that people were there to listen to you, and that hopefully you delivered content that resonates with them and that they take home with them. And they say, wow, that was really great. I took this one nugget, even if you speak for 60 minutes and they take 60 seconds of what you said and it changes something about what they do in their lives or their careers. That makes me feel really good. And it is a huge sense of accomplishment to come off that stage and feel like you delivered good content. You did a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, it's one of the things that I like about doing this show is we've interviewed over 60 people now on the show. We've had about 8,000 downloads on episodes. But, oftentimes I think, who's listening, right? But almost every single week I get an email from somebody going, hey, that really resonated with me. And it's just like what you said. You can speak in front of this huge audience, and if it only resonates with one person and changes their life, then you've kind of done your job, or at least accomplished your mission of sending a message out there of the right type and somebody picking up on it and making a change in their life and saying yes to things. One of the things that I liked about your coverage of the movies in the relation to business, you had mentioned something about even movies like E.T. and how they end. I think his last words were "be good," right?
Yep.
Just the messaging that comes out of that, and the messaging in your books. Can you tell us a little bit about the final messaging on your books and what they mean?
Yeah, sure. So you really have to be a 80's junkie to end up kind of looking at some of these great movies and saying, what can they teach us about business? And I look around my house right now and I see 80 skateboard decks on the wall that I use as artwork. I have a Don't You Forget About Me canvas print above my television. I've got Goonies prints, Stand By Me prints. So yeah, I'm definitely an 80's junkie. And I took a different perspective when I looked at some of these movies, and E.T. is a great example. At the end of the movie, E.T. says 2 simple words, be good. And he says it to, Gertie and Elliot, the 2 kids. Really, really simple, be good. And I thought about that a little deeper, and going back and watching the movie again, I realized there was a lot about E.T. and social responsibility and the way that E.T. handled himself on the planet and what he was looking to do, which was, basically to go home. But during the process of trying to go home, he was teaching a lot of valuable lessons about being good. And so I took that and said, wow, there's a great lesson here, particularly when you have companies like Warby Parker and Tom's and UB who are building these really successful businesses on a business model of giving back, which is awesome. So they're not only creating these great businesses with great products and great revenue, but they're also building them with the idea from the very beginning that they're going to give back. And so I thought about that with ET and Be Good, and I said it also extends to corporations in general. 20 years ago, a corporation would cut a check to the United Way or the Red Cross, and they would say, okay, that's our charitable doing for the year. Now they're allowing employees to go out and volunteer for the causes that they care about, and they're not having to use paid time off. Mm-hmm. They're getting more involved in the community rather than just kind of cutting the check. They're actually down there hammering the nails for Habitat for Humanity and doing things like that. So there is this social responsibility that's starting to run through corporations, which is awesome. And I think E.T. Taught us some really valuable lessons about that. So yeah, E.T. was a great one for social responsibility. I'll tell you also that The Goonies teaches us a really valuable lesson about inclusion. Mm-hmm. And for those that have seen The Goonies who are listening, for those that have seen The Goonies, you'll know the characters Chunk and Sloth, and two of my favorite movie characters of all time, both of them. And so, Chunk gets thrown into the basement after he gets captured by the family of bandits, and he's in this room with this huge being that looks very different. He's obviously been thrown into the basement because of the way he looks, not because of who he is, not because of what he can do for others, but because of how he looks. He's been chained in the basement by his family, and he's got this cone-shaped head and these ears that wiggle and these eyes that are kind of offset, and a few teeth missing, and he's this massive character. And Chunk at first is scared of him, but then he looks past all of the physical features and becomes his friend and invites him into the group and says, we just want you to be our friend. We want you to be part of our group. And at one point, he holds up Chunk and he's laughing, and Chunk tells him that he smells like Phys Ed. And so even though he smells like Phys Ed and he has all these weird physical features, he looks beyond all of that, brings him into the group. He becomes their friend. And in return, Sloth shows his loyalty, which is his great trait, by saving their lives at the end. And so there's a really valuable lesson in there for the workplace about inclusion also, because I think sometimes we tend to treat our workplaces as like a high school. We get these little cliques and everybody kind of is in their own little groups. And when you do that, people get left out. And number one, we shouldn't be leaving anybody out at work. But number two, oftentimes the person that we leave outside of the circle at work, it's for the most ridiculous reasons. And by the way, that person a lot of times has the most to contribute. If you just bring them into the group, you might be surprised how they can help you. Yeah. And it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of which, just going back to your book one final time here is, you spoke to me about giving back some of the proceeds through the book, and we're talking about being good and that messaging, and you're actually doing that through your book sales.
Yes. So I actually, thanks for bringing that up. I appreciate it, Jim. Yeah, so I self-published, and one of my kind of say yes to me things was to find a publisher. And I actually have a small publisher that is going to be relaunching the book in, let's say, hopefully in the next 30 days. It is actually still on Amazon, but we're just making some changes to it. And in the process, what I've done is I had the pleasure of meeting Meredith Ian, who's the executive director of the SPCA International at Dreamforce a couple of years ago. And she was up on stage speaking about this great program they had where when veterans come back from war zones and they've spent a lot of time with a dog a stray dog maybe that they have kind of taken into the fold while they're over there, they're actually reuniting those dogs with the soldiers here back home, with the veterans back home. And that's for me, veterans and animals, those are two incredible things for me as far as wanting to give back. And so I spoke with her afterwards and I said, hey, listen, I really love what you're doing. I want to find a way to help. And now that I have this book, I've decided to donate a portion of the proceeds to the SPCA International. So once the book relaunches with the publisher, there'll be a little piece inside of the jacket that says that a portion of the proceeds will be donated to the SPCA International. And I mean, I love giving back wherever I can. And so this is near and dear to my heart, animal rescue. And then, of course, veterans are both near and dear to my heart. And I wanted to make sure I could give back. And, that's what I'm doing.
I love looking at your story in a snapshot because if you think about it, you've got somebody that's made a big step out of their comfort zone, leaving their hometown, going to Florida, creating a career, having success in that career, and then getting out off the fence to build really kind of a legacy of what you're all about, and that's writing this book. But then it comes full circle by giving back. And I just think there's so much to learn from all of that. And if we can all model that in our own lives and the things that we do and have the opportunities to not only have a fruitful career, but the ability to get out of our comfort zone, do something exciting like write a book, or maybe it's a hobby, but then be able to take that and give it back. It's just amazing to me, Chris, and I really appreciate you getting on the show again, recording for the second time. My bad.
No problem. Yeah, I enjoyed the conversation. I was glad we got to do it twice, actually.
Hey, give us the rundown on where people can find this book, where they can connect with you at in case they want to follow through on this thing.
Yeah, sure. So the book is what 80s pop culture teaches us about today's workplace. And if you're an 80s person, or if you know an 80s person in your life who also, is a business person, or even is not in business, I mean, there's some great life lessons in there as well. It's a great book to pick up. It's in paperback and Kindle on Amazon. What 80s pop culture teaches us about today's workplace. I also have a website, Chris Clews, ChrisClews.com. And you can find more information on me there. I actually do speaking at events and conferences, as well as leadership trainings also. So if you're looking for something like that, something a little bit different and unique, I call it Laugh and Learn. There's these lunch and learns that everybody talks about, but I call it Laugh and Learn. So that's kind of my approach to the meetings and the events and conferences. And then on social media, Chris Clews on LinkedIn and Facebook. And then also on Twitter, I have the handle at 80s Pop Culture, which I still can't believe was available. I just pulled that 6 months ago and was shocked that it was available, but I'm happy to take it.
Yeah, I would be too. Well, listen, my friend, if I am walking by an improv door and I see your name on the marquee, I'm buying tickets and I'm heading in. So kudos to you.
That would be amazing. Yeah.
Well,
you'll be one of the only ones that knows that my heart is pumping through my chest right before they call my name. So
I love it. Well, listen, have yourself a wonderful New Year's Eve, and thanks again for being on the show today.
Thanks, Jim. I really appreciate the time. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Well, it was wonderful to have Chris on the phone, and there we have it, another episode of The Answer is Yes. Again, my apologies for the delay in the show, and see what happens when you put things off because you're trying to enjoy your holiday. You have technical difficulties. So round two, I think we got some great information out there, and one of the critical things that we talked about was saying yes to me. And I hope that as everybody looks to write their goals down for 2019, that they say yes to themselves first. Put those goals out there, be bold and risky, and realize that you too can do something. I mean, I just have to look at my own story for encouragement of what I want to do in 2019, to think that there I was a few weeks ago standing third in the world for men over 50 in the Spartan Ultra World Championship. I never thought that that's somewhere I'd be in my life. There I was in Iceland, 24-hour race. So we're capable of doing anything we put our minds to. And, I said after every show, what you believe is what you will achieve, and I sincerely believe that. A quote from Mark Victor Hansen. And the work I'm doing with David Meltzer these days has really been very fruitful. I'm doing some life coaching, so if that's something that you're interested in, please reach out to me. I work with Dave on my life coaching skills as well as the people that I am life coaching with, and he's got a tremendous amount of resources, and I've got a lot of background that could potentially help you with. I specialize in business and goal setting and things like that. And that's one of my goals for next year, 2019, to be doing more of that. So I'll throw that out there publicly. And speaking of a book, I am going to start that process in 2019. I feel like I've got a few words of wisdom I can throw out there, a lot of which I've learned on this show, too, in a short period of time. So at any rate, I wish everybody a Happy New Year's. We will have a show next week for you, and thanks for tuning in. Please share with your friends and family if you enjoy the shows. We really appreciate it. Those numbers make a difference to us and our advertisers. And thanks again.